we're analyzing and bringing sense to what the Trump government is doing. The basic problem of our government is that the rich people don't want to be taxed for all the things that the government needs money to do for them, and the mass of people don't want to be taxed for all the things they want the government to do. And so what happens is the politicians, are stuck. They can't provide the services we need without taxing us, they thought. But we don't want to be taxed and hold them accountable. So they've come up with a solution. How do you spend money for the mass of people and for the corporations and the rich without taxing them? The answer, you borrow it. And that's why we do that. And that's why the national debt of the United States is today $35 trillion, and our annual output of goods and services is about $25 trillion. So we're not even close, and that's a sign of trouble when you are borrowing more than your total output in a year. It's a kind of measure, been around for many years and used to signal distress. And distress is what we got. A government that can't keep doing this. The signs are crystal clear. There are three major rating agencies in the world: Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's. Moody's, over the last few weeks, joined the other two in demoting the credit of the United States. We're not AAA. We're not the best. We are a risky borrower, in the words of the world. Many other countries are not. We are. The United States, the biggest debtor country in the world, and lenders are looking at the Americans and worrying, will a day come when they can't pay back, or they won't? When their own people will rise up and say, you can't pay interest to rich people and foreign governments and corporations if the money that you're using isn't available for basic medical care, basic education, basic road maintenance. And at that point, the lender of the people who lend to the U.S. may not see their money repaid, and they're getting nervous, so they're pulling their money out. That's why the dollar has diminished in value by almost 10% since Mr. Trump was inaugurated. The signs are everywhere. The United States isn't the AAA-rated borrower that it once was. And now you can begin to see a certain desperation creeping in to what's happening. And that's very important that you understand that. Mr. Trump and his team are desperate. And they're doing desperate things because they don't know how to solve this problem. There's no magic way to make the empire return. There's no magic way to deal with these economic problems that derive from a declining empire and the economic difficulties that means for us. I've told you on many other programs that all of this is made even more difficult by the fact that the United States has a real economic competitor for the first time in the history of our empire. So not only are we going down, but somebody else is coming up, and fast, growing much faster than the United States every one of the last 30 years. So what is Mr. Trump doing? First thing he does is he arranges for his buddy, Elon Musk, to start saving the government lots of money by firing tens, hundreds of thousands of federal employees. I have explained the nonsense about efficiency. It has nothing to do with efficiency. The federal government in the United States is the same size today as it was 50 years ago. We are 100 million more in number, but we haven't required more federal employees. That's a sign of efficiency, not inefficiency. And none of this is about efficiency. It's about saving money so the government doesn't run such big debts. So it fires a quarter of the veterans who work at the Veteran Administration. It lays off the AID. It lays off The education department, incredible. That's not efficiency, that's a hatchet job. And it's done out of desperation. Mr. Musk, who sits on top of a bureaucracy at Tesla and several other corporations, knows how slow and careful you have to be to build and preserve efficiency. You don't go through firing whole departments. It's childishly inappropriate unless you're desperate. And then there's the second desperate thing, Mr. Trump's tariffs. He has decided to hit every other country in the world with a tariff, a minimum of 10%, and many countries, like China, much more. That's a declaration of desperation. You know why? It makes every other government angry. We are trying to solve our problem at their expense. Making them pay a tax, or making Americans, when they buy their products, pay a tax, means they'll sell fewer products. It hurts them. A president they didn't elect is hurting them, not sitting down having meetings figuring it out, not coming up with a program where we share the burden. No. We're fixing our problems at their expense. And you know, a tariff is like a sales tax. We all pay whatever the importer charges us more because the importer has to pay the tariff. Whether you're rich or poor, you pay the same extra. Tariff makes no distinction between rich and poor. It's not like the graduated income tax. It's not progressive. It is regressive, the opposite. Mr. Trump is putting a burden on all of us in the rising prices we will be paying, already are, and putting a burden on every other country. And guess what? In every other country, the local politicians there are now able to say, yeah, we have problems here in Asia, Africa, Latin America, but they all come from Mr. Trump. Are they blaming Trump for problems that are partly their own? Absolutely. But Mr. Trump has given them the invitation, given them the excuse. We are being isolated as a country because in desperation, we are trying to solve the problems of a declining empire and a declining U.S. capitalism at the expense of our working class and the rest of the world. That's what this crazy push is to get rid of all our immigrants, illegal, undocumented, or not. What is that about? This country became strong precisely because it could absorb the immigrants generation after generation, find them initially, bad housing, bad schooling, absolutely, but giving them a chance if they work. And they did, and they brought up the country with them. Deporting means we no longer can absorb what we used to not only absorb, but welcome. That's not a sign of strength. That's not a sign of America #1. It's the opposite. It's a sign of desperation and no longer being capable of doing what we once did. And now finally, the big anti-China push. What is this about? We don't permit American companies to sell all kinds of things to China. We put huge tariffs against China so that they can no longer sell to us. We hamstring their executives. We try to punish them every which way we can. And it's obvious what we're trying to do. Fix our problem at their expense. But more. Slow them down. They're catching up. They're still behind us, but they're catching up and they're getting close. And we're trying to hold them back. That's a losing proposition. In the 19th and 20th century, particularly in the 19th, the British, who had been doing it in the 18th century, tried to hold back the United States. Our War of Independence, let me remind you, had a lot to do with an event in which the King of England, George III, put a tax on tea. Remember reading about it when you were in school? And the merchants in Boston who didn't want to be taxed by a foreign king, threw the tea overboard into the harbor in Boston, the first and the most famous Tea Party. We had to fight a war with the British to get free of them, to be able to develop our country. No sooner had we fought the War of 1776, we had another war in 1812, a few years later. The British tried again and failed again. You know what? A lesson was learned by Britain. You can't stop this. Economic development grows, and it grows unevenly, and it grows often in places that are new faster than in places that are old. It's in fact a kind of pattern. That's why Europe is now a backwater relative technologically to the United States on the one hand and China on the other. What the British couldn't do to the Americans cannot do to the Chinese. And a war is not a way to figure that out, not when both sides have enormous stockpiles of nuclear weapons. The United States, and on the other side, China allied with Russia, is not working. And trying to do it in these ways is desperate. And the Chinese are not bending. They don't need to. They understand that history is on their side. We can't yet figure out what to do because we can't face what I just said. Not as a nation. We're still denying it. We're still acting like we're the king. We can do this. We can do that. Losing the wars, losing the struggle. Mr. Trump's big, beautiful tax bill that passed the House of Representatives at the end of May guarantees that our deficits will go on in huge trillion-dollar sizes for the next several years. We can't do that. Doing that got us to everything I have summarized today. But look, he can't do it. It doesn't work. Too much resistance to the tariffs. Too many retaliation tariffs that are going to hurt us. The United States is becoming isolated in the world. Recent polling shows that around the world, the U.S. used to be much more favorably viewed than China, but that's been reversed, especially since Mr. Trump won the election and took power. There's not a question of saying China's good and America's bad any more than such a silly idea was true in reverse. It's facing honestly where we are. If we don't do that, we're going to make mistakes. Ukraine misunderstood that Russia could and would turn to China and solve the problems it faced in fighting that war. The United States hadn't planned on it. The Europeans hadn't expected it. They made a mistake. But it becomes, if you think about it, a result of denying the decline of the empire and the decline of American capitalism, not understanding that desperate measures, which is what Mr. Trump's plan is about, will not likely work and will be, in any case, extremely costly. That's the reality of the economic problems and programs of the United States government as I speak to you.